Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. And look, I have a settee and a plant and a lamp. Oh my God, it's just really coming together. I do need to figure out lighting, but things are really shaping up nicely and it's just so good to be back filming. I just still feel so excited. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about what I think is a misconception or a misunderstanding about what it really means to make progress with a language that you're learning. And I think that this misconception can lead to a few different problems, such as people feeling sort of disappointed in themselves because they feel like they're not making progress based on what they define as progress. And I think it can also lead to real tangible issues such as having a more brittle foundation in languages that we learn. So that's coming up today. Before we start, I just want to say, of course, if you like this content, please do consider subscribing and give this video a like. I never really ask that, but it really does help. And I also want to give a really quick shout out to my Patreon supporters. Oh my God, you guys rock. I love you all. And I'm very excited to say that I am now finally at a place where I've finally done it. I am giving access to my videos 1 full week in advance to Patreon supporters. I'm doing more engagement now. We've got the Q&As, we've got the extra video per week, which is like a diary. We've got access to special downloads and all kinds of stuff. So thank you all for supporting on Patreon. And if you want to join, there's certainly lots of value there to be had. But let's jump in and just, cheers to another awesome day for learning languages. Oh, that's really good coffee. Okay, so what is this misconception that I'm talking about? Well, what I found over, working with loads of students, teaching people, and watching the online space, watching the comments, the questions that people ask me, lots of people seem to think of progress when learning a language as doing or seeing or studying or learning new stuff, right? So they think that, okay, if I do textbook number 1, I've gone through the textbook, that's progress. So now to continue progressing, I need to do textbook number 2, or I need to study a new app or a new type of resource. I need to do a new lesson. I need to learn new things for that to constitute progress with my language. And you may have noticed, if you've watched my channel for a while, I've talked a lot about my tendency to very often review and consolidate things I've already learned. And, I have learned a whole number of languages to very, very high levels at a given time. And in those moments, I've often been praised for specifically things like accuracy, right? Or sort of idiomatic usage of language or things like this. And in my opinion, that actually very often comes down to having a really solid foundation, which comes from this process that I always go through of constantly going back, reviewing, consolidating. I'm never afraid to go back and look at the basics, even as an advanced learner. And I've spoken in the past how even in French, for example, even after I had worked a job as a French speaker, full-time, answering phones all day in French, all this stuff, I remember arriving in Hamburg, Germany, after that experience, and I got a big old French grammar book, and I went back to the very beginning and just ran through everything. And even then, I remember feeling that foundation like settling in. I remember seeing things that I hadn't fully understood before. So a recent example that I want to give you, which is really what made me think of this video topic, is that, as many of you know, I've been learning Mandarin Chinese for a long time. And one of the resources I used were these integrated Chinese textbooks. Now, I've spoken about how I went through the first one of these textbooks quite some time ago. And then I also kind of went through about half of the second textbook in the series. There are a total of 4. But then I went away from these for quite some time. I did some other resources, other things, and I also then took like a 2 or 3 month break from Mandarin Chinese, spanning sort of October to, I'd say, sometime in end of January. And so when I came back to Mandarin Chinese, the first thing I did was I went back to the very beginning of the first textbook. I just knew inside of me that was what I needed at that time, because in that moment I was feeling sort of dejected. I was feeling like my Chinese sucks now. It was never that good before. Now it's really bad. I've forgotten everything. But as soon as I started going back through that first textbook, it was, first of all, as I've discussed, it was a major boost to my confidence because I realized how so many things that I remember being incredibly challenging and difficult when I first looked at the textbook, they were now easy. I mean, effortless, right? And it was really fun to see how far I could get. And I got pretty much to the last 2 or 3 chapters of that first textbook before things started to get kind of interesting again, kind of challenging. But what I want to talk about today is that I have now basically finished the second textbook. So I've now completely retracked all of my steps that I had previously done in Mandarin Chinese. And so you might think, well, that's a bit unfortunate, I mean, it's taken a month or 2 to get basically just back to where I was before. But it's not true at all. I have improved my Mandarin Chinese so much through going back and reviewing and retracing those steps. And I feel so much better about my Mandarin Chinese right now. I feel so much better about where I'm going, where I am. And I feel really good about now moving on to new stuff because it's not that I just refreshed what I already knew. I deepened my understanding. I deepened how well I've assimilated the structures and the grammatical things and all the different words. There are so many things that I feel better about now. And so I can say unequivocally, my Mandarin Chinese is substantially better because of that process. But I haven't really gone over a lot of new stuff. I've gone over a couple of episodes of that podcast. We've got that really fun series I'm doing documenting my journey to understanding native podcasts in Chinese, but I've only done 1 episode of transcription and I've listened to a couple of others. But I mean, for the most part, it's all been just reviewing stuff that in theory I already learned. But there's a very big distinction that I want to make to close out this video, which I think really drives the point home. It's that there is a huge difference between covering all the materials up to advanced, right? Studying resources and content up to advanced, and actually knowing it, actually being an advanced speaker of the language, right? Having an advanced level. It's a huge difference. And so let's imagine that we have 6 textbooks. Now, in reality, ideally, you're not going to be relying on just textbooks, but just to make this simple, let's pretend that it's just 6 textbooks: beginner 1 and 2, intermediate 1 and 2, advanced 1 and 2. Now, just because you go through all 6 textbooks, that does not make you an advanced speaker, obviously, right? And so what a lot of people do is they just keep going. So they go through beginner 1 and 2, and then they think, well, I want to keep progressing, so I need to go to intermediate 1. I need to keep going. And they never really stop to go back, right? Because they associate progress with just always moving forward onto new territory, new things. And whereas in my opinion, if you take this person who goes through all 6 textbooks, one after the other, and if you take someone who does what I do, right? So go through number 1, maybe start number 2, feel a bit shaky, go back to number 1, review number 2, awesome, we're solid. Now we're on to textbook number 3. I think that at this point, I probably speak the language overall far, far better than the person who just kind of went all the way through to advanced. And certainly as the two of us, as we progress and continue through our journey speaking the language, my foundation is going to be so much better because as I get to the intermediate 2 textbook, I'll probably go back and, go back over the first one. I'll be constantly reviewing things, checking things out. So the longer that time goes on, the stronger my foundation gets. Whereas for the other person, the longer time goes on, of course, your overall level will increase, but I almost think your foundation gets a bit weaker because there isn't that time being taken. Now, of course, eventually, as you keep going and going, as you continue spending time with the language, you will over time see those things again, see those basics. And so I'm not saying that the way I'm describing it is the only way, but what I am saying is I do think that this is why, I typically learn languages to very high levels historically. Right now, some languages are a bit rusty, and that's a really exciting challenge for me this year to get everything back to where it was. But I've never had a problem with that. And again, a very common feature of my language skills when I get to the place I want, but even at lower levels, is, I guess, relatively high accuracy and things like this. Whereas a lot of people I know, it's a very common problem people have where they say, technically I'm advanced, right? Or technically I should be this, but I don't feel like that. And I can really barely speak. I can barely do X, Y, or Z. And there's this disparity between the content people have learned and covered, but the skills they actually have. And I think that this is potentially why. And like I said, there are people who do more like what I do, but then they start to feel discouraged because they feel like they're not progressing. So I just want to say it's absolutely not the case. It's so worthwhile going back over the basics and just taking time, whatever level you are at, to consolidate. It's such a good thing to do. And there's no way I would do this differently than I have with Mandarin Chinese these last few months. And it's the same with Spanish. My Spanish is far more advanced than my Mandarin. And my Spanish has improved substantially in the last few months. All I've been doing really is going back over my Babbel courses, just enjoying it. I've done some podcasting, I've done a few other things, but largely it's mostly just been review. But again, my Spanish is undoubtedly better today than it was a few months ago. So with that, I will leave you. Of course, I would love to hear your comments, love to hear about your experiences. Let me know down below. And once again, if you haven't already, subscribe, like, and I'll see you back here for the next video.